What up, everyone? This is Bevan of FanBolt, and today I am talking to the director and writer of a one-man musical called Whiterock Cliff. Yep, that's right. Today we're talking musicals in quarantine. But what's more exciting about this is the director is a Klingon Star Trekkie character from Star Trek Discovery, Mary Chieffo. Don't watch Star Trek, but I'm gonna ask her great questions about Star Trek anyway. And then the writer, Ellie Pyle, is the director of creative development at Marvel, which means she can't tell me anything, but I'm gonna ask questions anyway. So let's go, shall we?
I always want people to be prepared that I don't know all of the Marvel secrets. I know some that I can't talk about, and then there are a bunch that I don't want to waste your time asking me about because I don't know. That's always the fun, is remembering what's been announced, what's come out.
Oh yeah.
Where am I today? Yeah.
Well, Mary, you don't really have that much trouble with Star Trek, right? Like, are you that restricted?
Not
like Marvel?
anymore. When the show was first filming, because it was the first one in this new iteration, we were super under lock and key, like no posting anything, and like the whole first season essentially. Luckily, I had a great relationship with our PR person, and
Oh, cool.
so, like she always, we reached a point, like I've reached a point with my relationship with everyone that they know I'm not going to do anything, stupid. So it kind of built, like by the time we were in the second season, I wasn't as worried, like, oh, do I have to run every single photo by? Like, I trusted my own judgment based off of their stuff. And I think now it's so oversaturated, like that they're kind of like, yeah, you do your thing. And
yeah, whatever. It's free publicity.
With the conventions and everything, you kind of already are your own, like you kind of become your own entity with your character and everything. So, and I can always play the actor card of just like, well, that's just, I just showed up and did my acting stuff. Like I have no control over anything else. So
I showed up and said some words.
Yeah.
I said words. Yeah. They put me in a makeup chair. It was great.
Yeah,
I got some great accessories. I tried to ask if I could keep it. They said no, but I took it anyway.
Exactly. That's very true. But yeah, I do remember. I still have like a, what would you call it? Like a trigger and aversion, like if someone posts something from on set, because that was so verboten for so long, I'm like, and then I'm like, oh wait, it's not Star Trek, like it's not the first season, like you can't do that, and I'm like, no, actually no, it's okay to do that now.
Actually, we can. Welcome, the first page has been open.
Yeah.
What are your hot takes on San Diego Comic-Con doing Thanksgiving weekend?
I don't know, man. I'm so intrigued as to how that's all gonna unfold, or if it's gonna
happen.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for us to get back to conventions when we can do so safely. And I will be interested to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how tactful you are with your answer about it, because like it's one of those things where like I'm fully excited for cons to come back and like be with people and stuff like that. But then there's like the logistics of like how are we coming back though? Like, is this gonna, like, are we gonna be ready? Is there enough time? And also the whole Thanksgiving weekend thing is also questionable, because a lot of people are like, oh, that's kind of when I have to see family.
Yeah. Well, oh, go ahead, Ellie.
No, I was just gonna say, we're lucky that it's an easy trip from LA, so that's a nice thing.
I know. I don't even think about that. Like certain stuff, like San Diego Comic-Con's always been pretty accessible, and like, oh yeah, it's a drive, but it's there, as opposed to people really having to make travel plans and all that, of course.
I mean, look, if they can do it safely and we're all, and hypothetically, if we reach herd immunity, I'm all like, whatever, let's just do it. Let's have a party. Like we've been mourning the loss of cons for like a year and a half at this point. So like, let's just jump in and just all have one big, wonderful rave, Comic-Con rave. But ladies, let's also talk about your one-man musical project, which I found very therapeutic when I watched it. I was like, oh, this is how an artist like just copes with lockdown.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It is definitely a show about coping.
I would love the backstory of it, because I found myself like, I loved the story, but I also was like, I'm so intrigued on how this came about. What happened? What was this also from a mental health breakdown? I was like, well, we got to do something. So let's just set up a bunch of cameras and he can play 8 different instruments. Just get in there.
Yeah. We didn't rehearse any of it. No, that's not true at all. In the spirit of Whiterock Cliff, I'm not promising to tell you the truth. This all did come out of the fact that Ryan and I have a 6-person version of this story that we had actually just finished a public staged reading of the weekend before lockdown. So we went from this crazy first live performance of this thing, which we actually ended up live streaming that on Facebook Live just for it was up as long as it was up, because we realized like this was the first weekend of March 2020. Like we knew that there were people who were not going to be able to make it to the show, and so Whiterock Cliff really kind of started its life weirdly as a inadvertently streaming show, but once we went into lockdown, we all had different projects that we were kind of working on, and this was something that Ryan really wanted to revisit kind of in this new way, and kind of dig into some other pieces of it that are the full cast musical is very much the story of Reese and Emma, and this rock star and this novelist kind of, walking toward each other along the trail. So Ryan brought in a lot more pieces of the creative process, pieces of his own life, which had kind of inspired that story in the first place, and kind of weaving it all together. And then we brought Mary in to figure out how 3 cameras were going to work.
Yeah, I would love to hear your thought process on that, Marion. Like because I'm assuming you're not in New York, you're in LA, correct?
Yep, I'm in LA. I was the only West Coaster, which was really fun.
Oh man, the rehearsal process of that.
Yeah.
I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, I was so thrilled. Yeah, Ellie and I and Ryan, we've all been working together in a fun sort of workshop-y way all year, doing readings of works in progress and having feedback sessions. And I had met Ellie in 2019, even though we do have a fun
10 years ago. Great.
Yeah,
exactly.
Years ago. But we were at, what is our origin story? We were at the New York Comic-Con 2018.
Yes, so
I was there too. I love New York Comic Con.
So I actually saw Mary for the first time on the Star Trek Discovery panel at New York Comic Con 2018, and I already knew that my theater company Bespoke Plays was planning to have her do a reading of my co-producer's play at some point. It took us a year to get to it,
but you got there. That's all that matters.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, that's Mary, who I've been hearing so much about. But it's very funny that we very much bonded over the fact that we were independently having these like crazy weeks of our life during that particular convention, that we were on these like parallel paths of instant friendship.
The fact that this was in an actual studio space and that we would have like 3 cameras to be able to play with was very exciting. It was another fun way to explore how we can reclaim theater during a time when we don't get it the way we're used to.
No, absolutely. I love the 3 cameras. Did you always want just 3 cameras, or were you trying to get more cameras, or was it just that's what we had?
Ellie,
it was always 3.
Yeah, it was always 3.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary had a vision.
Well, 3 is a magic number if you listen to Schoolhouse Rock. So, like, I'm totally fine with 3. I was just curious if it's like, well, this is all we got, so we'll go with 3.
Yeah.
If we could have 8, I would prefer to have 8.
Nope, I would absolutely not prefer to have 8. 3 was enough of an adventure. But yeah, we really wanted. It was a strange combination of needing enough tech that it could still feel like theater and have you forget about the tech completely. But still kind of, once there was a lot of work that went into kind of figuring out the technical elements of the show and how to bring you this live stream, because when we say a live stream, he does it live 4 times a week. It's different every time. And once the cameras start rolling, you really do get that theater feel of anything could happen. This man is alone out there with his 3 cameras and his instruments, and he is going to make it work. And that's part of the energy of the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also thinking too, when I was watching Ryan, I was like, I wonder how comforting this is, because he's not aware how many people are actually watching him. Because I know, as like somebody that studied acting too, that's like, it's sometimes you get more visceral performances, I think, when you feel like you're being intimate, as opposed to when you're hyper aware that there's like 500 people in the audience. And I was very curious. I was asking myself that question. It's like, oh man, I wonder how this has affected him differently if this was in front of a live audience versus having this kind of sort of private thing going on for him.
I know that he does miss the live audience.
Oh, sure.
That it is a strange experience to kind of be in this vacuum of, you know, you were putting all of this out there and you're not necessarily getting anything back.
Sure.
Which is one of the reasons we set up actually a message board where people can go and, you know, share stories about hiking the trail, share thoughts about the performance. You know, we wanted some way to kind of keep that two-way relationship open.
When you're on stage, you're projecting at a certain level, but the core of the truth, it remains the same. And I think that's kind of what has to be your compass, is just the way you are giving your energy, the direction, and how it's being like, yes, when you're on a stage with 500 people, it's that core, but you're having to project it out to a certain extent. And so then when you're in a room with 3 cameras, you have to have that same level of energy, but just know, oh, I'm giving it to this camera right now, or I'm looking at this camera, or I know the camera's on me from here. I'm not looking at it, but I'm energetically giving it that space. So yeah, it's just, I think, a recalibration of give. And I, in the process and talking to Ryan a bit about it, as he was going through, I think the thing in this show in particular, having musical performances, I think that's the thing that feels the most jarring for him, to finish a song and then be like, okay,
thank you, thank you, I'm here all night. Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's that trusting of like living in that beat, and especially since it's such a meta show and his character, he is going through, he is rehearing the songs in a new way. Yep. So allowing himself that space to hear it and take it in and not feel like, oh, no one's applauding, I should just jump to the next beat. It's like, I think we're much more comfortable with taking our beats when we can feel that breath with the audience. And so it's about trusting your own breath and the journey you're going on with yourself.
Part of the fun in writing this piece was figuring out, okay, these are the technical elements we have to play with.
Yep.
What do we do? We have 3 cameras, 8 instruments, and a cell phone on stage from which he's cueing his own sound.
Right.
And how do we use all of these things in as many interesting ways as possible?
No, you definitely did a very great job with that, both of you ladies. And I would love to hear maybe what was the most complicated thing what most complicated hurdle you had to get through.
The biggest, I think, just challenge, which we knew going in, which is just like, okay, we've got to learn how these cameras work. We got to learn how this space works. And to direct and produce and write remotely is a very interesting challenge, because we're here on the Zoom, seeing what's happening in the studio, and our incredible stage manager, Allie York, who is running the whole thing, and she's cutting the cameras and doing the whole thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Her having to communicate in the space, and sometimes they can't hear you on the mic, and just like a lot of little technical things that we just had to learn the vocabulary within the rehearsal time. And you know, 5-Ohm and all of it, everyone, we've been able to, you know, really chat and figure it out together, because I think that's the exciting part. It's like the talkies or whatever new thing there is. Like, nobody knows what this is yet exactly. Yeah. We're all figuring out the best we can with the tools that we previously had. So I think coming in with that open, calm, collaborative energy of like, okay, well, this setup isn't quite working, and lighting, and like, we just had to just be like, pause. Okay, I really think we need to figure out what this lighting situation is more, or like, what can we do to position this camera? And for me, a lot of moments of like, we had, as you know, there are certain dialogue scenes in the play. Yeah. And initially we had a much more, I would say, theatrical choice of Ryan talking with like a music stand, all this sort of stuff. And then I had to go, oh, no, let's make it more filmic. like, let's just make it him having this conversation so we really get to watch him. Like, to me, I was like, you can create close-ups, so create them. And like, so it's still a hybrid of stage and film, but remembering that it is leaning a little bit on a more film realm when it comes to what the audience is seeing. So like embrace that and let that exist. So I would say just like learning, okay, what is the vocabulary of this piece in particular?
So you guys were saying that this was supposed to be staged. So hypothetically, is that what's for the future of this production?
Yes. So our producer, Martha Good, I'm mispronouncing everything. Our producer, Martha Good, has signed on to the future of this show.
Great.
Which I think potentially involves circling back on the full cast version. That's definitely something we want to do, and kind of take our learnings from this one-man version, which is something, you know, that Ryan can hopefully take and do whenever and wherever in the future, but then also taking what we've learned about these characters and about what story Ryan is looking to tell, and then kind of weaving that back into the full cast version, because, you know, there's some truth in this about the difficulties that we had kind of figuring out, you know, exactly what it was he was trying to say, which I think it becomes a big part of this show. And then kind of bringing that back into the fictional version.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you ladies both planning, because I know you both have like Marvel and you have Star Trek, are you both planning on being involved with the stage production?
I mean, when it comes to theater and working with Ellie and working with Bespoke and that whole community, like, I'm so grateful that we have these larger entities that we are a part of, and I'm grateful that, you know, we were talking about with conventions that will always be a part of my life. But my heart and soul always belongs to theater, so to be able to be involved in the creation of any theater with Ellie is always a joy. So yes, she knows me quite well when it comes to me jumping in and doing wild, fun theater things. So
Mary will always show up. Mary wasn't involved in the previous staging because she was literally on a Star Trek cruise at the time.
I mean, darn. Sorry guys, I'm in the Caribbean. I'll be back.
But
oh, it's so wild.
I'm still waiting to hear Mary sing. But yeah, no, theater is my first love, and thus I will always find time for it somewhere. You know, people.
Please, can you also share your social media tags so people can follow you and keep up to date with what you're doing?
Absolutely. So I am a very easy to remember at Ellie Pyle on both Twitter and Instagram.
Excellent.
And I am at Mary the Chief. So just MaryTheChief, a play on my last name, Chiefo.
Hey, I see what you did there.
There we go.
I see what you did there. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming to FanBolt.com. I am Bevan, and I will see you guys later.